another thing that I wanted to say, because this is part three, and I thought about something just now when I cut the camera off. I said, yeah, let me put that in the video too. And I was just thinking that a lot of our problems that we have now in our generation, it started with our parents' generation. If you notice, you don't see, like, you don't hear our grandparents talking about they had baby daddies and the man's on the down low. He's a drug addict. He's in jail. He got murdered. He's dead. What else? What else? My man loves white women, and he gonna leave me for a white woman, and all the brothers want white girls and Latino girls, and I can't find a good man because it's a shortage of good black men. You don't hear our grandmothers saying that. You don't hear our grandparents, say that kind of stuff, because that stuff didn't start with their generation. It started with our parents' generation. All the people that were born in the '60s and people who are 40. People who were born in the '60s, they're all 40 something years old. 42, 43 years old now. And my mother was born in 1965, and my father was born in 1963. So they're in their 40s or mid to late 40s. So all those problems started with their generation. It didn't start with our grandparents' generation. If you notice, all that stuff, like I said, them women saying a lot of our brothers on the down low, and they drug addicts, they no good men, they don't raise their children, they in and out of jail, they homosexual, they on you know you rarely heard that with our grandparents' generation. You don't hear them looking back on their times saying that, saying those kind of things about their men and about their women, or, black women are ghetto and, they have 5, 6 children, they got 2, 3 baby daddies, numerous, wait a minute, 2 or 3 baby daddies. You don't hear our grandmothers saying that about their generation. You don't hear our grandfathers saying that about their generation. You don't hear that from our grandparents' generation. You hear all this, wait a minute. The only thing you hear from them is, we had to sit in the back of the bus, or we had to drink from colored water fountains, or we had to not look white folk in the eye, or we had to watch out for the police because they would abuse us. You hear stuff like that. You don't hear them saying all the things I just said about them men being gay or down low or drug addict or out of jail. You know, Wait a minute. What else? I can't find a good black man because it's a shortage. 'Cause half of them are gay. You don't hear our grandparents saying that. So a lot of our issues that happen in our generation and over the last 20 years or 30 years, it came from our parents' generation. Everybody that was born in the '60s and stuff like that. It was their generation that did all that started that stuff. So if y'all notice, that's the truth. But that's all I gotta say. I just wanted to add that. And another thing is, you hear a lot of black women in our parents' generation say that all the black brothers want white girls and Latino girls and Asian girls. When you look at our grandparents' generation, you don't see, like, there were some black guys out there who like white girls and Latin girls and stuff like that. But it was more black on black, relationships. It wasn't so much interracial dating. It was a little bit because there are a lot of mixed, African Americans and old people out there today. Because there were some interracial dating back then, and in slavery days and stuff like that, slavery days and Jim Crow era, there were a lot, but they weren't as much as there are today. It's epidemics today. It's a whole rack of black guys marrying and having kids with white women and Latino women, Asian women, et cetera, et cetera. But back then, it was more black on black relationships. It was more, you know, and it was more families. There was more husband and wives and them raising their kids. 6, 7 kids being raised by 2 black parents, and they loved each other. And that's another thing. In our grandparents' generation, a lot of the old people, they stayed married for like 40, 50 years. You look at our generation, there are some that in our parents' generation that stayed together for like 30, 40 years, But then again, they weren't, wait a minute. They weren't alive 40 years because they only 40 themselves. What am I saying? They're only 40 something years old, so they couldn't be married for 40 years. They only 40 something years old, so they were a baby at some point. But I'm just saying, there are a lot of people in our parents' generation that are married for a long time. Like Bernie Mac, he was married to his wife for like 30 something years. Always, from high school all the way up until his death, he was married to his wife. So there are some people in our parents' generation who do still married, who still stay married for a long time. But you look at our grandparents' generation, a whole rack of them stayed together for like 40, 50 years. You got, I got people in my family, on my mother's side and on my father's side, both sides of the family. You have, I have like great uncles and great aunts that were married for like 40, 50 years, and they're still together today. They're still together today, and my grandmother on my father's side, him, oh, my grandfather on my father's side, him and my grandmother and him were both married for 40 years, 40 something years. So marriage in those days meant a lot, and a lot of our grandparents and great grandparents and just great uncles and that whole generation, the whole old school generation, a lot of them stayed married for 50 something years, 40, 50 years. But you look at our generation, we always go to the altar saying this. Oh, what it, wait a minute. We say this kind of stuff. To death do us part, but you're saying to death do you part, but you only stay married for like 5 years and then you get a divorce. So how is it to death do you part? You said death do us part, to death do us part. That means you stand together forever until the day you die. God